This is Mike. Today we're going to talk about the Coleman Exponent lantern, also known as the 229 lantern, and its predecessor, which was the Peak 1 lantern. These were small single mantle lanterns that were, I think, hopefully could be used for backpacking in the days when still flashlight technology was ancient, and batteries were heavy and didn't last that long. So it must have been, I think, right around the 1990s, maybe earlier. I'm not big on the history. They came up with the Peak 1 lantern, the Coleman, and this was your typical two-mantle lantern, big, reliable, robust, lasted forever. Both of them sunshine of the night. But the smaller version, whether it was good enough for backpacking or not, I don't know, but it was certainly excellent for canoeing or kayaking or car camping. Excellent. And this is it. You can see it's a single mantle. You can see that white sock in there. Nice little unit, compact, reliable, put out a lot of light, but it had some flaws. And those flaws, I think, eventually killed the Exponent, or this model, because they no longer make it. And the problems were most noticeably that you had to pump it every 15 to 20 minutes, or the light would go down and start pulsating. And the second problem is that the globes were breaking all the time. I myself went through 10 globes till finally I said, this is crazy. So today I'm going to tell you how to solve all those problems. And if you happen to be lucky enough to have one of these lanterns, which they don't make anymore, here's how you can use it so it'll work better. First of all, let's talk about the globe. That's an easy one. The globe, the glass globes, I believe somewhere along the way, Coleman switched over to made in China instead of made in USA or made in Germany. And the quality of those globes were not as good as they used to be. Sorry, they just weren't. But more importantly is because the globes were small and the mantle socks would get a hole in them sometimes. It's normal, it happens. Eventually you get a hole in your mantle sock, you have to replace it. But when that happened, when that globe was small, is that flame that would shoot out of that hole would hit that glass and blink, it would break. Break. Happened to me. I suppose you could change your socks as a regular maintenance thing, but it just happened. So what I did is I changed to a mesh screen globe. I don't think you can buy them for this unit, so I made one myself. You can see that that's a screen. I just used some stainless steel screen like you'd use on a back porch screen. And I have instructions on how to do this on another video, and I'll give you the link to that as well. So that's the first thing you can do. The next thing is you want to make sure that you're not losing pressure in your lantern. Now, if you got a Coleman double mantle, new, old, doesn't matter, a Coleman stove, anything where you're pressurizing, if you're losing pressure, you're going to have problems. So there's at least two things you can do to check. First of all, you want to check the cap and make sure that you're not losing pressure from that cap. There's two things that can make that happen. First of all, do you see that O-ring, that black O-ring there? Those can get bad, they can get old, and you can replace those. So if you can either buy that from Coleman, or you can go to your hardware store and say, hey, you got anything like this? And if you're lucky, they can help you out. The next thing is that this mouth here can get corroded. You see that? Right in this mouth. Not sure if I'm aiming the camera good enough. That can get corroded. If it does, you take some emery sandpaper and you can sand that. You need a block. You don't want to do it with just your fingers because it's got to be perfectly flat. Sand it. But before you sand it, you take some cotton ball and you put it in the mouth here, or you turn your stove upside down and you sand it, because you do not want your sand filings to go down into your tank. So put a piece of cotton ball in there, sand it, pull the cotton ball out, or better yet, hold your unit upside down and sand it. So that's the first thing. Sometimes you can actually hear the air coming out if you have a bad seal. Not usually. Occasionally if you have a really, really bad seal. The next thing is, what a lot of people don't realize is that you can lose pressure through the pump valve. Everybody's familiar with the Coleman pump valve. At the bottom of this valve is, at the bottom of the pump is a valve with a round bearing in it, like a ball bearing, and then a spring behind it. And that can get dirty, and when it does, then it won't seat well, and air can pass through. So despite the fact you're pumping, slowly the air can come back the other way. There are instructions you can find on how to take that valve out and clean it. Don't do that if at all possible, because the chance of you damaging your stove or losing parts, or an ancient part that just would work for 50 or 70 years suddenly disintegrating is a real possibility. Here's all you got to do. You take some WD-40. And you don't, of course, WD-40 is not as good for everything like they say, but it's good for a lot of stuff, and this is one of them. You see that little hole there? That's where you put the oil so that you can, it lubricates the plunger so that you can get air pressure. Well, you take the can of WD-40, you put it down into that hole, go all the way back, and just give it 2 really, really small squirts. That's it. You don't want to overdo it, because that WD-40 is going to eventually be burned up through your generator, and it'll do that. It'll burn it, but you don't want to gum up your generator more than you have to. So just a little bit. What that'll do is that WD-40 the solvents will clean off the valve. It'll clean the valve and it'll lubricate it a little bit, and that really can help a lot. So the next thing is, the third thing is Seafoam. My Exponent never worked from the very first day. It didn't work that well since the very first day that I got it. A 15-minute runtime was all I could get, and then I have to repump it. It was so frustrating that I didn't use it that much because of it. But then gradually I tried all these things I'm telling you about. One of the things that really helped a lot was Seafoam. I don't know if there was junk in the generator or somewhere in the lantern when it was assembled. Maybe there was a little dab of grease or something. I don't know. But anyway, Seafoam really, really helped a lot. Now, one of the things that Seafoam can do for you is it can help reduce moisture in your unit, whether it's in your tank, probably in your tank, or maybe possibly in the generator somewhere. But when you pump your stove, either your stove or your lantern with regular atmosphere, especially if it's a rainy day, a humid day, it's morning, that air gets pressurized and that moisture turns into water, and that water beads up on the bottom of your tank. So a lot of people, how many people actually clean out their tanks on a regular basis, even once a year? Mostly not. And that's why the old stoves and old lanterns sometimes rusted through the bottom, because there would be water down there sitting there as it was stored for decades, and finally it would corrode it. Later on, Coleman, I think they coated the inside of the tank so that they'd be less prone to moisture damage. But as a normal thing, I would clean the fuel out once a year, clean out your tank, blow it out with air, let it dry out, just make sure there's no water in there, and then 2 tablespoons of Seafoam in your tank. Not all the time, maybe once a season. If there's any moisture in there, the Seafoam will help get rid of that. Finally, we're going to talk about how to operate your lantern so that it works well. And this is critical, because I think most people don't get it. You know how to light this thing. You have to turn this back 1, 2, put your finger over the hole there, and then pump. Now this is a small tank, so the pumping's pretty easy. I'm not even counting. I'm doing it by feel. When it starts feeling too hard for me to pump, then I know it's good enough. Now then, the next thing you do is we're going to prepare to light it. I want to point out, have you guys seen this this type of lighter? It just looks like a normal Bic lighter, except it has this snorkel on it. This is fantastic for camping. Why? Because it fits in your pocket. You know, not like one of those barbecue lanterns where that snorkel is really long. It fits in your pocket. It's perfect. So I'm going to recommend this. It's called a Croc. But here's something. If you have it in your pocket, this has happened to me a number of times, lint from your pocket will get down in that hole and then it won't work. So if it's not working, look down there and see if you got some pocket lint in there. Okay, so now we're going to light it. So we got it pumped, and I put my lighter up in here, and I light my lighter. I turn the fuel on full. Oh, it doesn't normally light that fast. Okay, now I'm going to let it calm down a little bit. You can see that the fuel's coming out a little bit angry, a little bit testy. Very typical for a Coleman lantern. And then eventually that mantle, that sock gets hot enough, and now it's running well. Now here is the critical thing. You can see I've got it on full open. Most people will leave it there. This lantern supposedly you're able to adjust the amount of the brightness, but in fact it rarely worked on most of these. It didn't work on mine. I guess some guys they could actually adjust it, but it was hit or miss on whether it did or not. But here's what you have to do. Back off on the lever. Now watch how much I'm going to back off. You can see how much it is here. I'm going to back off until I start to see an effect on the brightness. Look at how much I backed off. Okay, now that's not bright enough for me. I want it brighter, so I'm going to move it over until it's full brightness. Now look at that. That's about a 25%, or in fact, from the full on and off, that's about halfway. So now that's where you want it to be. You don't want it to be pushed over to full. You see, now it's on full. It didn't affect the brightness at all. Back it off, and then turn it back to where it's as bright as you want it, and not more than that. And of course, as always, after you light it, you got to give it a couple more pumps, less than 10, probably, I'm going to guess 5 or 6, okay, and then turn it clockwise to close it. This will run for at least 2 hours, about 2 hours, and I think the maximum run time on these was about 5 or 6 hours. So, and I won't have to pump it again. So all those guys that had one of these that they only had a 15 to 20 minute run before they had to pump them, if you put it away, you know, in a closet somewhere in your garage and forgot about it, guys, go get them, dig them out, try the stuff I told you, and you're going to have a really excellent lantern. If you see them on Craigslist, you see them on eBay, whatever, at a thrift store, pick it up. They're not making any more, and with the things I taught you today, you're going to be able to have a really nice lantern that is bright and a lot more smaller, more size efficient than the big ones. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. If you did, let me know, and I'll be happy to answer any questions if you leave me a message. Thanks. Happy camping.